As I said earlier, we assume a certain level of programming knowledge for this course. In this video, I'm going to talk about functions, drawing on what you've already seen and giving you some examples that will be handy for this course. Sometimes we want the same lines of code to be reused while we change the data that the lines apply to. Here's an example of a for loop which counts from 1 to 10, where the changing value of I is added to a variable inside the loop each time. Let's make this do something on the screen. Now the same loop structure is drawing a blue square on the screen, but in different locations as the loop variable changes. Look carefully at the sections of the program that are highlighted in yellow. By using the name fill followed by numbers, you are changing the color we use to draw shapes. By using rect followed by numbers, we are telling processing to draw rectangular shapes. In both cases, we're using the same piece of code somewhere else in processing by referring to it with a name and giving it some data to tell it what we want to do. Both fill and rect are examples of functions. We are using a name to execute lines of code with the data that we provide after that name. Let's look at some terminology. When you want to use those lines of code, we refer to that as calling the function. In your program, your function call will have at least a name and a parameter list. I've highlighted these on the slide. Want to use the built-in processing code to change that fill to red? Give a different parameter list. But this is only one type of function. We can also use little blocks of code that give us a result. Let's look at one of those from processing. The processing get function will tell you what color any point on the screen is, but in order to use that value when we call the function, we have to save the value that it gives back into a variable or use it straight away. As you can see, we still have a function name and parameters, but this time we also have a value that comes back that we can use. Now let's write a simple function that draws shapes on the screen, but doesn't give any values back. We want to draw 5 red circles, but we want the user to be able to say where to start drawing and how big they should be. Processing needs to know the x and y coordinates to draw, so with x and y and the size of the circle, we're going to need 3 parameters. To define a function in our code, we have to provide a declaration. Here's the starting one for our new function, which we're calling drawCirc. We have a name, parameter lists, and then there's this word void. All that means is that the lines of code we run here won't be giving anything back to a program that uses it. We're just going to do some things here rather than pass any values back. We already have some drawing code from the first example, which I'm going to drop in here and then change. We want red circles, so let me change the fill color and the shape drawing function we use. Now I'm going to change our code to only draw 5 circles. Now for the trickier bit. Those variables defined in the parameter list can be used inside the function as if we defined them ourselves. That means we can use the x and y locations to tell processing where to start drawing the ellipses and use the size parameter to say how big we want it to be. Ready to see what that looks like? Now, whenever we call drawCirc, we can tell processing where to start drawing those circles and how big they are. You can find these examples in the attached materials and can paste them straight into processing and watch them working. Here's using drawCirc to draw circles one way, and here's another example. In the next Foundations video, I'll explain how to return values from a function as well as some other useful terminology. You've already been using functions throughout your earlier programming. We're just showing you how to write your own. See you soon.